And so that leads me into my next topic, because it's honestly, it's been a little rough. And that is losing a big client. Now, if you follow me for a little bit, you know that I have been doing this, I freelance, remote work, digital nomad lifestyle, but I've also been building my business into where I have retainer clients. And my first big retainer client has just recently decided to go another way, and they've hired internally. Not going to say who the client is, because obviously I don't want to release that. But I remember they were my first big client that I got when I first went out on my own. So in a sense, they've been a huge blessing to me. They've also been a little bit maybe of a hindrance, because I did have such a big client. So I didn't have to, I was so busy with them that I didn't focus enough on getting more customers and diversifying that customer base. And just found out probably, I would say less than 10 days ago, actually the night before I was leaving to go out of town on a vacation, that they were hiring internally, and that they would no longer need my services. And I would say that I mean, I'm trying to be careful here with how I describe this. And I've sort of always felt a little insecure about them being my client, because I mean, we're talking about a company that is based locally where I'm from in Jacksonville, Florida, but also has offices nationwide. And I almost felt like for a while that they were too big for me, or I was too small for them. Now I have a dedicated marketing services team that I work with. I have a dedicated developer team that I work with. And I am essentially the chief strategist and project manager for all of my retainer clients. And then anybody who isn't on a retainer, who needs, you know, just a one-off project here or there, I'm happy to help there too. But I've always felt a little insecure about this particular client, because I've sort of felt like they needed to hire a big agency. They needed to hire somebody internal. And while they're not hiring a big agency, I still think they probably should. But they are hiring internally as far as development wise. But with me in particular, it's a one-woman show here. What you see is what you get. And I know that this is probably the better decision for them to make as far as, like, you know, hiring internally. But with this situation in particular, I was lucky in that the person who hired me ended up leaving this company earlier this year. And so when I knew that she was leaving, I said to myself, it was more of my reality check earlier in the year. And I said, I got to diversify my client base. I can't risk losing one client and then that put me out of business, because if this company would have decided to go in another direction earlier in the year, I probably would be out of business right now. But they did choose to stick with me through their hiring process and through hiring, you know, a new marketing manager, and stuck within that new marketing manager did stick with me for quite some time. But anytime new leadership comes in within a company, there's going to be some changes. And I completely understand that, because as somebody in a leadership role, you kind of want to bring in your own people, right? Like you have a certain way that you like doing them, right or wrong, and you want to have your own thing and sort of make your own mark. And that's really where this situation has led me, because they have decided to go in another direction. And I remember hearing this piece of advice over the summer, because when the old marketing manager did leave, I said to myself, well, you know, I have to diversify. And I started making investments in technology, in workflows, in automation, like all of that. Just, it sounds so boring, but it really has been something that's been a blessing in disguise, because even just a couple months ago, I'm questioning myself, like, why am I investing so much time and energy into this? Like, money is good right now. I shouldn't have to worry, but as I've heard before, the day that you get a new client is the day you start losing them. And if you have that mindset going in, like obviously you never want to lose a client, right? But there's always going to be the, grass is greener on the other side, or I can do it better myself, or maybe, that this is an instance where, they need to hire a bigger agency. They need to hire somebody that's internal that can get something done, in less than 48 hours, which is usually our turnaround. Usually it's about 24 hours, to be honest. But I usually like to say 48 to 72 business hours is when any kind of new addition or support ticket will be taken, will be handled. So that sometimes speed is very important to a lot of businesses, and I'm hoping that they achieve that with their new person. But it's still sort of left me feeling, going back to that insecurity is I think was almost a stronger suit of mine, because I prepared and I was lucky enough that I saw the writing on the wall and prepared for this exact thing to happen. Now, it's still a gut punch. No one wants to get that kind of news, especially the night before. I literally got this news hours before I was going out of town. And, oh my God, it's just so, whatever. Still, like, having a plan in place now for this migration to happen into trying to keep this relationship in good standing. I'm the type that I never want to burn any bridges, and I'm never going to leave a company stranded. So I am helping essentially train my replacement, and I know a lot of businesses wouldn't do that, but I'm trying to put myself in their position, and that's what I think you kind of have to do as a marketer is you have to put yourself in position of the companies that you're helping, because the more that they grow, the more that you grow. And I can't change that now. I can't change that philosophy now, even though they've decided to move on from my services. So it sucks. It was a little bit of a gut punch, but I think, being, probably a week and a half removed from the situation, I'd still had a good vacation, which I'll get into in just a second. But I think that the biggest takeaway that I wanted you guys to grasp from this is, do not have all of your revenue tied up into one or two clients, even a handful of clients. Like, as much as I've been preaching about diversification as far as your social media strategy is concerned and your marketing strategy should be concerned, you should absolutely do that with your client base too. And it's really sort of knowing in the back of my head that this was going to happen for the better part of this year. It's allowed me to strategize of how I want to continue doing business, things that I would like to change. And I think that the big positive for me is that I had the time to plan for this. It was still a gut punch, but when it happens, it's still good news that I have a ton of skills that I can now develop, having working exclusively with that particular client. I offered them exclusivity, but now that I have all of that knowledge that I gained from working exclusively with that big company, I can now take that experience and apply it to other companies, helping out other companies within that industry, and especially on the product side of things, which has been in the works for a little while, and especially when it comes to running your own business, especially for a service business. I think it's also very, very important that you diversify your income streams too, and developing more on the product side of things, where I can not feel, I guess, as guilty about working with other essentially competitors of my clients. I don't have to feel as guilty in that regard, because I'm developing products and solutions that are for the industry. It's not for one customer, it's not for one client, it's for this industry. So that was I think I've said it 5 times now, but the gut punch was real. But